Hello, everyone. My name is Puay Guan. I'm an associate professor at National University of Singapore. I teach at both the business school as well as Scale, which is our School of Continuing and Lifelong Education. And today I will share with you an overview of Industry 4.0, overview and current trends, as well as the new Masters in Industry 4.0, which was launched 2 years ago, and at which I serve as the academic director. So if you look at the rise of digitalization in the last 20, 30 years, this is a good overview of that trend. And what you see over here is that 30 years ago, we had the majority of the world was analog. And even up to 2007, the world had pretty much changed to digital. But what does it actually mean when we say that the world has become digital? We hear so much about digital transformation, about digitalization, but what is actually the impact of it on our lives, and how does it actually impact our lives going forward? Okay, both in terms of personal lives as well as our corporate work that we do. So over here, I give you some examples of what analog technology was about, right? So if you look at, for example, the typewriter, okay, replaced by computer, okay, or replaced by smartphones, and then over here you see, a post office, which of course we know that today a lot of information is being sent by electronic means, and of course a digital film, okay, or digital camera. Taking pictures on smartphone versus analog film. So these are examples of what was traditionally analog technology, but it has been displaced by digital technology, okay, in ways that we don't even realize, because the change has happened gradually over a period of time, but it has actually changed the nature of companies and how we deliver products and services. And I'm actually going to give you a couple of examples of this as we go, in the next 10, 15 minutes. So this is the first example. If you look at Encyclopedia Britannica, many of us, when we grew up, you will know that we wanted to display the encyclopedia in our bookshelves, because that was seen as a premium thing to have at home, right? But if you look at the sales of Encyclopedia Britannica, at the peak in 1990, okay, they had their highest ever sale, okay, and since then they had actually continued to drop in their sales over a period of 10, 15 years, and finally, if you look over here in 2008, they stopped. And basically, they were purchased by, by Microsoft, and they actually was closed down. Okay, so that was the end of Encyclopedia Britannica in the hard copy form. But why did this happen? Okay, if you look at the reason for that, of course, the trend was in this what we call the industry 3.0 first, which is basically the computerization era. So in that computerization era, what you find is that computerization had actually made it much easier for information to be transmitted over the internet, right? As well as to be stored in digital format and to be replicated. So the first thing that happened with Encyclopedia Britannica was that Microsoft introduced the CD-ROM encyclopedia. So you could have information on CD-ROM, and this CD-ROM was being sold at $100. So you have a $100 CD-ROM versus $1,000 encyclopedia, and that was the first level of impact on that, and it caused their sales to drop. And then in the 1990s, you find that the internet was starting to become popularized. So you had search engines like, in those days was Netscape and Yahoo and Google, later on Google and Wikipedia. And these were all providing information search for free. Of course, their business model was based on advertising rather than selling information. So this information was going out for free, and it was updated much more rapidly. So as a result of this, you find that the encyclopedia, which needed to be printed in hard copy, right? So it's an analog technology, needed to be printed in hard copy, and needed to be refreshed every 2-3 years, by editing, was not able to keep up with that computerization and then the internet trend. So those two impacts on Encyclopedia Britannica led to declining sales, and eventually the company had to close down. Okay, they still maintain an online presence, but the encyclopedia itself is not the same business as what it was last time. And then, of course, if you look at something that we are also very familiar with in the newspaper industry, this is the newspaper sales. Okay, so you can see that the newspaper advertising revenue, you can see that the newspaper has been declining steadily, okay, over the last 50 years. Okay, so the print part of the business has actually declined, whereas the internet part of the business, which is over here, has overtaken, the print part of the business. So underlying this, we can see two things. One is that the trend of technology displacements takes place over a long period of time. It doesn't immediately happen in 5 years, but over a 10-year, 15, 20-year period, it gradually happens. So the good news is that we have time to prepare, but the bad news is that the companies, may not realize the immediate danger, but if they don't start preparing for it now, in the next 5, 10, 15 years, when the trend starts to really hit, then it will be too late for them. So companies need to prepare in advance for technology disruption. At the same time, there's also a possibility for us to be able to adapt, because the technology disruption doesn't necessarily happen overnight, but takes place in gradual stages over a period of time. So if you look at what we discussed just now, the impact that we see on the Encyclopedia Britannica and on the newspaper industry was very much based on the computerization era that started in the 80s and 90s. Okay. And then, of course, accelerating into the internet era in the 90s and 2000s and what we see today. But as this internet era becomes much more pervasive, the next step that companies talk about is how do we actually integrate even the hardware, okay, and the information of things, in what we call the Internet of Things, smart devices, onto the internet itself, and that forms a foundation of Industry 4.0. So if we look at a company like Amazon, okay, if you look at Amazon, this is the share price of Amazon. Amazon has actually been public since the late 1990s, but in the last 10 years, the share price has actually shot up exponentially, as you can see from this chart. So if we think about Amazon in our concept of what a company like Amazon looks like, we'll think of Amazon as e-commerce. But Amazon has actually evolved beyond e-commerce in the last 10 years. They've actually added fulfillment operations, logistics operations. They have actually introduced technology in many ways, including smart retail stores, that enable them to create a whole ecosystem, not only based on selling products on the internet, but being able to deliver products to customers, being able to create new products and services that is not only about e-commerce. So let me just give you an example around that. If you look at this is infrastructure, cloud computing. Okay, so if y'all have used Amazon Web Services, okay, it's basically a cloud computing service where we actually go onto Amazon to store our information. When Amazon introduced Amazon Web Services, they were using this service for themselves. Means that because as an e-commerce company, they needed to provide data storage and data center in order to keep their own information. But eventually they found that other companies wanted to tap on their infrastructure to use that service. So they actually offered this as a service to other customers, and they were wildly successful. So if you look at the market share of the top 5 cloud computing providers in the US, okay, Amazon is number 1. So when the IT companies like IBM and Microsoft realized that, oh, this is a good business, they all jumped in, right? But they were catching up with Amazon. So if we think of Amazon as an e-commerce company, but hey, it's also doing IT, right? Which means that it is not just an e-commerce company anymore, but it has added new products and services in retail, in IT, in logistics, beyond that array of e-commerce services that we traditionally associate Amazon with. So industry lines are blurring, okay, and because industry lines are blurring, it actually makes companies and company management and the shareholders of companies, the board directors of the company worry about where the disruption is coming from. And this is where companies have started to embark on transformation projects in order to not only protect themselves within their industry, but very much to protect themselves against external players or external competitors coming from outside of their traditional industry boundaries. So when we look at Industry 4.0, it is very broad, right? So we hear so much about Industry 4.0, but what does it involve? So just now what we had seen, okay, with the third industrial revolution with computerization, is, of course, computerization builds on top of the previous two industrial revolution. First of all, which is the mechanization, okay, or steam power, okay, so that you can actually run large scale production, okay, and then further from that, in the beginning of this century, mass production, the use of assembly line, and then of course the use of electricity, which actually makes the power more, makes the products or machinery more powerful, okay, and able to do on a more consistent basis than steam power. Okay, so what you see is that each industrial revolution builds on top of each other. And what we've seen, of course, in the computerization era is the rise of the use of computers and then the internet. And now at the next stage, we are talking about physical devices that are being linked to the internet and being able to share information. So this could be our smart fridges, could be our smart TVs that are linked to the internet. We can now watch YouTube on our TVs, right? We can surf the web on our TVs. We can have smart fridges that actually keep track of, how much food we have in the fridge and send an email or send a message to place an order for e-commerce. We can now have smart CCTVs that we can look up on our phones. Okay, so these are then devices that are connected to the internet, and that is one of the next waves. That's the next wave of what people term as Industry 4.0, which is a cyber-physical interaction between physical devices and the traditional information internet. So devices that we are using, okay, both as a company as individuals, are linked to the internet. And that means that our robots can be linked to the internet, our sensors can be linked to the internet, okay? And this creates new business models as well as massive amounts of data, so that large amount of data that we are collecting from e-commerce, from sensors, actually, allow us to do data analytics and to conduct optimization and improvements on company operations and on sales and marketing campaigns, okay, using the data that's being collected and generated from not only information platforms, but also from the physical devices that are sending us that information. Okay, so physical devices linked to internet, as well as a lot of information that is being collected from information platforms and from the physical devices around us. And that allows us to do data analytics as well as AI, machine learning, artificial intelligence, and being able to make predictions based on the data which we collect. So in a nutshell, Industry 4.0 is very, very broad in its scope, and there's no clear way that we can define exactly what it is, okay, because it's made out of so many different technologies. So when NUS started looking at how do we offer this program, okay, this type of program to students in future, okay, we decided that it had to be a multidisciplinary program that brings together so-called the best of breed of our different faculties and schools together. Okay, so we actually curated a program based on courses from our School of Computing, Engineering, Science, Information or System Science, as well as the School of Continuing and Lifelong Education. Okay, putting together, a best of breed to create a broad-based as well, broad-based overview of the different aspects of Industry 4.0. So this is the third year that we just finished our second intake, okay, and it will be going to third year next year, okay. And if you look at the current program structure, the first 4 modules are so-called the core modules, okay, where we are providing overview of different areas of Industry 4.0, and I'll run into a little bit of detail later. It is then followed by a grad cert, okay, which is basically a specialization. Okay, so the students will actually choose from 1 or 2 of these specializations in areas involved with engineering, such as 3D printing, or robotics, or areas like data analytics or digital transformation. Okay, and then they will end with final core module, which is Industry Consulting Application Project, where they actually work with companies to work on a real problem that they provide to us. Okay, and I'll touch on each of these areas in a little bit more detail. Okay, so if you look at the core modules, these are the core modules. Okay, and each of these, as you can see, they are actually offered by a different school. So we actually curated these in order to capture the breadth of Industry 4.0. So the first module is, Introduction to Industry 4.0 and Applications, where we actually give that broad overview and the broad sweep, and how do you actually think about using technology within your operations, and how do you create a roadmap for this. And then subsequently, we have IoT, robotics, 3D printing, okay, various engineering areas, okay, and the course is called Digital Physical Integration. And then the third one is data analytics for sense making, okay, and that covers data analytics techniques, okay, as well as applications. And the fourth one is digital infrastructure and transformation, which covers digital transformation, as well as our School of Computing, areas such as cloud computing and cyber security. Okay, and then we end with the industry capstone project. So with 2 years of experience now, these are some of the companies that are currently working with us, okay, on the capstone project. So you can see that there are a good mix, okay, of multinationals, government agencies, and also large local companies that have come on board to take part. We also have startup companies as well that sometimes are looking for good students, to work with them on certain technology development. Okay, this information is on our website, so I'm not going to touch too much on this, but basically, this is our admissions criteria. Okay, so some for technical background, okay, com science, science, engineering, okay, and you can look it up in more detail for yourself. Candidature for full-time is typically 1 to 2 years, okay, so on average, it takes about 1.5 years. And on a part-time basis, it's 1.5 years to 3 years of time. All right. So when we launched this program, we had actually worked with this EDB Smart Industry Readiness Index partner, Smart Industry Readiness Index as well. Okay, using that framework to think about some of the program items that we want to put in. Okay, and when EDB launched their partner index in October 2018, NUS was actually one of their founding partners in this partner network. Right, and these are some of the endorsements that we have from corporate companies, okay, that have worked with us in various forms, okay. So I'm just going to pause for a while and let you look at it for yourself, right? Rather than to read out everything that they said. Okay, so these are testimonials from Dell, ST Engineering, and Tutsu. All right, and this is our first orientation that we had in August last year. All right, and we had a good cohort for the first intake. We are expecting our second cohort for this year August as well. Okay, which will be more than last year. All right, and then we actually went to visit Micron Technologies to take a look at their operations and see how they actually automate their processes and how they actually use data to analyze their operations and improve on the efficiency of their operations. Okay, and of course we have not only class lectures, but also discussions, group discussions, projects, and also industry speakers to supplement the lectures as well. So with that, if you are interested in more information, please, you can go to the website over here or scan the QR code, and that should be able to provide you with more information that you will need for the program itself. So with that, thank you very much for your time.